What's up, everyone? Aaron Nagler here for PackersNews.com, live on Facebook late Tuesday afternoon, as is my annual, monthly, daily tradition. Jumping on Facebook with you fine folks to talk some Packers late in the day and see what's on your minds, as we've had a bit of a lull here in the offseason, no doubt about it. Not exactly daily news happening, but always lots to talk about. There's always the combine coming up, and then the draft. And before all of that, we got free agency, so see what's on your minds. And of course, we can always pick over the carcass of the 2017 season. That's always fun to do. William, Steve, hello. Thanks for joining us. Michael, hello. Thanks for hopping on. William gives us a Go Packers. Alex, watching the replay of NFL Network, thanks for retweeting it. No problem. I believe NFL Network is showing the Dallas game from last season. It was number 7 on their top 10 games of 2017. What's up, Lacrosse? How you doing? Nagler's never right. You got that right again. Justin, hello. Jeffrey. Jeffrey Jordan Sr., hello, sir. How are you? Well, what do you see as the shift point in this draft to get a game changer? Well, that's a good question. I know tradition does dictate that there does seem to be kind of a drop-off tier-wise when it comes to players. Obviously, you can get a playmaker anywhere in the draft, but it sure seems like the Packers are on the fringe of kind of difference-maker, area at 14. But that said, with the number of quarterbacks that are suspected to go in the top 10, and the fact that there are 1 or 2 offensive linemen that could be selected, that's going to push some talent down to the Packers. And it might not take much for somebody to fall to them or for them to jump up a few spots. They may not have to jump up very far because of that depression, especially on the defensive side of the ball, talent-wise, that they may be able to get, may be able to find someone. Now, who that might be, that's really in the eye of the beholder, and that is going to be the determination that Brian Gutekunst and company are making over the course of the next month or so. Do you think Harold Landry is a good pick at 14? Alex, I talked about him a bit yesterday. I suspect he would be. I really want to see his combine, but I do think he is going to shoot up boards, and you're going to hear a lot more of him after the combine, because I suspect he will test well. Is Aaron Rodgers going to sign back with us, or is he leaving? He is not leaving. He has 2 years left on his deal. The Packers are working on an extension, which will most likely get done by the end of the summer. But even if it's not, he's not going anywhere anytime soon, even if they were not to sign him to a contract extension this offseason or the next. They still have the franchise tag that they can put on him for several years after his contract runs out. So he's not going anywhere anytime soon. Casterly hit a corner in the first round. Do you agree? I saw that. Yeah, absolutely. That is definitely a way they could go. I think it could go any number of ways. I think they could go corner. They could go edge rusher. They could go defensive lineman. Even a safety or a wide receiver wouldn't surprise me. About the only thing that would surprise me maybe is like a punter, a kicker. Probably an offensive lineman at 14 would surprise me, but not out of the realm of possibility. And even quarterback wouldn't surprise me. If only because of how we saw the team fall apart last year when Aaron Rodgers went down. And Rodgers is the age that Brett Favre was when they selected Aaron Rodgers. Now, I don't expect that to happen, but you never know. How about Bulaga? I heard he could get released. It's a possibility with his cap number and his continued injury history / problems. His being released is definitely a possibility. I don't know if we know that anywhere near for certain, but you have to think it's in the realm of possibility. Draft a wide receiver in the first round, Blake. That's something they could look at. I would suspect they look on the defensive side of the ball first, but with both Nelson and Cobb coming up at the end of their contracts. I know they just re-signed Devontae Adams to a big money deal, but a general manager's job is to look down the road, and if you want to replenish that position for an offense that uses 2, 3, 4 wide receivers at a time, a wide receiver at 14 is not out of the realm of possibility. Is it out of the ordinary for a quarterback the stature of Rodgers to be out of the loop when it comes to team moves? I don't think so. I think that's pretty normal. Tom Brady's not sitting around, wondering about every move the Patriots are making in the offseason. Big Ben isn't sitting around wondering what the Steelers are doing with every move in the offseason, even if I suspect this question is about the quarterback coach, brouhaha from a few weeks ago. I mean, look, Tom Brady's quarterback coach is like the assistant quarterback coach because, Josh McDaniels is the play caller and or quarterbacks coach, but the one true dedicated quarterback coach that they have on staff in New England is, has never played quarterback, is pretty much a nobody that no one's ever heard of. And, that's who Tom Brady has to work with day in and day out because Josh McDaniels is busy being the offensive coordinator. It happens year in and year out in the NFL. I mean, Rodgers chose to go public with his dissatisfaction with their decision not to talk to him about it, but it's not that uncommon. I would love Josh Brown in free agency. Jonathan, that is a great idea. That is something I was looking at yesterday morning. I was going over the possibilities free agency-wise at wide receiver. And I tell you what, John Brown is the kind of guy that could definitely open up the offense in a way that they desperately needed last year, and they've needed for a while, I would say. I think selecting Trevor Davis a few years ago was kind of that was the idea behind that selection, but he hasn't really panned out the way I think they would have hoped. But John Brown, man, I'm telling you, his speed, Aaron Rodgers, yeah, that's a fun possibility right there. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm not even saying I have no idea if they're even going to look at him, but I think it makes a world of sense. Sign Ziggy. Well, I know that's tantalizing to think about, but I would be surprised if Ziggy Ansah hits the free agent market. Remember, we've got franchise tags, transition tags, and the possibility of him still just being outright re-signed by the Lions. So a little ways away from that being an actual thing they might be able to do. Sabrina, hello from Germany. Well, hello from New York. Thanks for hopping on. Landry, Jessica, yes, I think Landry would be an excellent addition. Something we talked about yesterday. Sean Richardson worth a look at? I think so. It really depends, I think, if I remember right, I think he was there when Pettin, with the Jets when Pettin was there. So maybe there's some familiarity there. And maybe that helps, Jeff. Nagler says Brown to Green Bay, a done deal. Take it to print. I'll let my bosses know. Has Pettin moved Janis to corner yet? Mike, that's my favorite comment all offseason. Although, I mean, if we're being real here, Janis has to resign. He's set to be a free agent. Now, obviously, this positional versatility will help him on the free agent market. I kid. Pew worth adding, solidify the line. Scott, I posited that theory on Twitter a couple weeks ago. I thought Justin Pugh, who's set to be a free agent, soon-to-be former Giants offensive lineman, former first-round pick, I think he makes a lot of sense. I think some of that will depend on the financials, what the market is around him. But I do think he's worth a look just because of his versatility along the line. He's played everywhere. I think he even played center at some point, which would help the Packers as far as having a backup. Although I know they signed the kid from Denver late last year. But yeah, I think Pugh makes a lot of sense, if for no other reason, than he can play right tackle. Something that they're going to need, at least for the first 6 games, if Balaga's back, because he's not going to be ready. So it makes sense. Justin, hello. Thanks for joining us. James Harrison worth a look. Dan, I got to think he's set to probably, if he comes back, re-sign with the Patriots. Maybe he goes back to the Steelers, though I doubt it. But Harrison's the kind of guy I think would make a lot of sense, but I don't expect the Packers would ever sign him. Just because you sign him, you obviously are signing him to get after the passer on third down, play a handful of snaps, maybe 10 to 12 snaps in a game, maybe 15 tops. And he's not offering anything on special teams. And he's going to command a decent salary. You put all that together, it's just not the kind of signing the Packers have made. Now, maybe Brian Gutekunst breaks form and does something completely different, but I don't know, we'll see. Who will be the punt returner? Draft, keep Davis? I tend to think they need to draft somebody. Maybe they find somebody in free agency who can kind of maybe do some kind of dual role. I think they have to move on from Davis. I know he had that one big return in Cleveland to help save that game, but is one return really worth all the mistakes he made in judgment when it came to fair catching or not, or catching the ball at the 4 or 5 yard line, or even in the end zone at one point? I mean, I don't know, man. He's going into his 3rd year, and he's no more reliable now than he was his rookie year, to my eyes anyway, as a returner. And he offers next to nothing as a downfield threat, which is the whole reason they drafted him. So, I don't know. I try not to be reactionary about this. I've tried to let it play out, but to my eyes, yeah, they gotta find a legit returner. I think they've tried to make Davis into one, but I don't see it. Now, they may totally disagree with my evaluation. Wouldn't be the first time. But, yeah, I think they would have to look at the draft hard for a returner specialist. Now, I've said this for years, and they've obviously not done that, so I'll just keep... It's much like the third down back thing, where I've said for years that they need some kind of shifty, athletic third down weapon for Rodgers, and they've done very little in that regard. So it probably falls in the same thing. Raji for punt returner. There you go, Steve. Thinking outside the box. I like it. When would a new Nelson or Cobb contract occur? William, probably sometime before the start of free agency, which will be mid-March. So if and when that kind of news drops, it'll be about 3 or 4 weeks, or maybe less. I don't know. What is it, the 13th today? So probably in about a little less than a month is when we'll probably start to hear. We'll probably start to hear rumblings during the combine, which I believe is in 2 weeks. That's when the team, the agents, and the media will all be in one city for about 5 days. So usually something comes out in that time frame. So we'll find out. Put Rodgers leaving to bed. I keep trying. I keep telling people Rodgers isn't going anywhere, and people keep asking. I don't know. In your opinion, is it important to retain Morgan Burnett? That's a good question. I guess it all depends on how you define important. I think he can still play. I think he can still help the team, but I don't break the bank for the guy. If he's willing to sign a team-friendly deal, absolutely. But if he's not, I let him hit free agency, and I say, if you don't find a number that you like out there, you're more than welcome to come back with us here at our number. But I just, the way his body appears to be breaking down, now that's strictly on the outside looking in. I'm not privy to the medical information that the team has, but from the outside, it sure would seem to be time to at least get him back on their terms. But I don't think I wouldn't make him a priority. I would say, like I said, let him go. If you don't like what you see out there, you're more than welcome back. Because I do think he's still a very good player when he's healthy and on the field, but that has happened less and less as the years have gone on. I think the Packers will draft an early round right tackle. I don't think it has to necessarily be in the early rounds. They've had a lot of success in the late rounds finding starters. I mean, Bakhtiari, Corey Linsley. I know Balaga was a first rounder, but Taylor was an undrafted guy and a guard who stepped in and played left tackle down in Dallas, and he played really well. Now, that's not to say that's the way they're going to go, but I don't think they're going to feel pressure to, we've got to get someone early in the draft. Now, if someone falls to them, they think is a good value and can step in at right tackle, yeah, maybe they pull the trigger, but I don't think they will necessarily feel boxed in that they have to. Considering we go defense at number 14, how much of a say does Mike Pettin have? That's a really good question. I think, he'll definitely have input in regards to what kind of players he likes, what types of kind of traits he's looking for. But at the end of the day, that's Gutekunst's call. That's his. The roster is his baby. It is 1,000% his. Now, yes, he will absolutely ask Mike Pettin, and they are undoubtedly going over that right now, this kind of period leading up to the combine. But, ultimately, it's personnel makes that decision. Tight end, Jeremiah. Yep, absolutely. We've talked about it quite a bit. That's a position that needs a complete overhaul. Lance Kendricks is a fine number 2, but you cannot. I don't think they can go into the 2018 counting on him to be their number 1 tight end. That's just me. Reports say we will trade up from number 14. What are your thoughts? I suspect you're talking about the ESPN article, which was actually Rob Demovsky just guessing one crazy thing that might happen this offseason. Now, I do agree that it's has a potential to happen just because we don't know how Gutekunst is going to operate as general manager. We have no track record to go off of. I suspect that it's a long shot that he'll jump up, unless he absolutely falls in love with someone who appears to be falling. But I suspect he'll stick at 14 or maybe even drop back a few spots. From Magali, Scott, I love the kid. I think it's a possibility that he ends up in Green Bay. I tend to think he's probably a third-day pick, but I do think he can help an offense and especially help Green Bay. Randall at safety was a top safety out of college. I disagree there. I was kind of leaning that way last summer. But I tell you what, that kid really turned it around the second half of the season last year. You look at the kind of last month and a half of tape, he was playing out of his mind. He was playing very, very well at the corner spot, especially in the slot. I don't think you move him to safety. And maybe down the road, maybe maybe if he loses a step, loses some speed, etc. But right now, I think he's penciled in as their, slot corner for next year. As Mike Pettin said, you got to play 85% of the time. You got to consider all 3 of those guys starters, and I think Randall's one of them. What's your take on Vontae Davis? Dalton, I think, talented guy, obviously. I know it was put out there yesterday that he's got a, quote, clean bill of health. I wouldn't be surprised if they maybe possibly brought him in, took a look. They'd want to get, obviously, their medical staff to take a look. I tend to think he'll get paid in a way that the Packers won't go all in on. They're not going to get in a bidding war for a guy with an injury history. And I don't think they're gonna overpay to, especially for a guy who's getting up there, coming off an injury, and not to forget the way he kind of exited Indianapolis is. It doesn't look good for either side, but that's going to be something they're going to have to research. So, is it a possibility? Sure, in so much that every free agent is somebody that they're looking at, undoubtedly. But I don't know. I don't see that happening. Let's see. First, Davis, what do you think they'll go after for a backup QB? Jonathan, I tend to think they'll have to look at both the draft and free agency. We've talked about it a number of times here, but I can't see any of the top flight free agent quarterbacks wanting to come to Green Bay simply because they know Aaron Rodgers is the guy and they have no shot to start or even compete for a starting job. But I do think someone like Geno Smith, Ryan Fitzpatrick, somebody along those lines could potentially be a backup to push both Brett Hundley and a draft choice, because I do think they have to draft someone because, let's face it, unless Brett Hundley makes a monumental leap during camp next year, he's not your answer long term. You're not going to trade. You're not going to be able to get anything for him in trade. You've got to start grooming another quarterback. Hundley had his chance and kind of blew it. So I tend to think they'll look at the draft and free agency. Is it legal for us to contact soon-to-be free agents? Not yet. The legal tampering period starts 2 days before the opening of free agency, which I believe is March 12th. So not yet. Let's see. Brian Hoyer as the backup QB. I can't remember how long he signed for. I know they obviously made a call on him that came out in the middle of the season, but then he ended up signing with New England, and I can't remember if he signed a 1 or 2 year deal. I'm not sure. It's a possibility if he's out there. Hundley shouldn't even be allowed back for camp. Now. He knows the offense. They can get through a game with him if needs be, and he could still improve. I know no one believes that, but it's true. That said, and he's dirt cheap. He's on the last year of his rookie deal, so you're not paying him a lot. You're going to need that arm in camp. You keep him around for those reasons, but you definitely bring in competition. And if he doesn't improve or he doesn't look like he's improving, then you cut him at the end of camp. thoughts on who will be running back 1? Jamal, Shine. Where does Ty go? I think it'll be Jamal Williams until Aaron Jones shows that he has stepped up in pass pro. But the second that Jones does, the second that Jones shows that he's not only rock solid in recognition, but also in his ability to step up and take on big-time blitzers and stick his nose in there and not whiff and things of that nature in pass pro, I think he's your number 1, no question. But until then, it'll be Jamal Williams for those reasons. As far as Ty, I've said it all offseason, and I'll continue to say it into the summer. I don't really care what they call him, and I don't think they do either. It's a question of getting the ball in his hands. And if they do that as a third down back, if they do that as a switchblade kind of player, maybe a slot receiver / specialty player, I don't call him broccoli for all I care. Just get him on the field and get the ball in his hands. Create some packages for him because, you talk about pass protection, again, that was his kind of weak point. He's not going to be your lead back. That's going to be Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones, and probably transitioning from Jamal into Aaron Jones as the year goes on. What rookie do you expect to make a big second-year jump? I think the easy answer is Vince Beagle, because I do think that he's a talented kid who just missed way too much time and then was thrown into the fire at the end of the year and didn't really show much, but that's because he missed most of the offseason. I think he'll maybe surprise some people, because I think there's already a section of fandom that is writing him off. But I also think Kevin King is going to take a big jump. The playing time he got this year was invaluable. I think he'll come back healthy with that shoulder healed. And I think he's really going to be... I hesitate to say he's going to be something special, but I think he's going to be a very good player. I think he's going to show that from the start in 2018. All right, everybody, I'm going to have to jump, but thank you so much for joining me. I'm sorry if I couldn't get to your question. They do fly by rather fast, but make sure you're checking PackersNews.com for all the latest. We are in the midst of our positional review series. Tom Silverstein's overview of the linebackers dropped yesterday. I believe Ryan Wood will be going over the cornerbacks. That'll drop tonight. So make sure you're checking those out, and everything else at PackersNews.com. Until tomorrow, have a good night.